Good morning, everybody, and good morning, children. It's really great to be with you again in your living rooms or wherever you're able to watch this. I hope you've had a good week, and I hope that you've been able to find some time to read some of your Bibles. There's some really exciting stories in the Bible, and if you read a children's Bible, then sometimes they are made even more exciting. So I hope you've been able to do that and maybe even find some promises in the Bible. There was another challenge that I set to you last week, which was to see if you could find the name of the baby that Abraham and Sarah had. His name was Isaac. So it's exciting, isn't it? It's amazing that even at Abraham and Sarah's old age, God still kept his promise and he gave them their first baby boy, baby Isaac. Okay, so do you remember we are learning the story of the whole Bible in just 10 weeks, and we're going to have a look at our banner now to recap what we've learnt so far. So, right at the beginning of time, God made everything. He made Adam and Eve, his people, and he put them in the Garden of Eden, which was a beautiful place. They lived under his rule. God was king, and everything was good, just as it was made to be. But then along came the sneaky serpent. Adam and Eve disobeyed God. They ate from the tree that God had told them not to eat from. They got kicked out of the garden, and everybody was sad and unhappy and cruel and mean to each other. But God had a plan to fix the problem. And we learnt last week, didn't we, that God gave 3 promises to Abraham. Can you see the 3 arrows? 1, 2, 3. He promised Abraham that he would have a big family and that big family would live in God's special place and that they would be blessed. So we learnt about that last week. Okay, so today we're going to find out what happened next and learn about our next story. So, once upon a time, there was a little boy called David. He was the youngest brother of 8 boys. Can you imagine? 8 boys. Now, in those days, the youngest boy in the family was the shepherd. Do you know what a shepherd looks after? Shall we have a look? A sheep. So the shepherd would have looked after the sheep of the family. Now, being a shepherd is hard work and smelly work. And you have to work outside all the time with your sheep. You need to find food and water for your sheep. And you have to protect them from big animals like wolves and lions and people who might want to steal your sheep. Now, David lived a long time after Abraham. So Abraham would have been his many greats grandfather. And you remember that God promised Abraham that he would have a big family. Well, David was part of that family. God also promised that Abraham's family would live in a special land. David lived in that special land, and that land was called Israel. The people of Israel wanted to have a good king to look after them, to guide them, teach them, and to help them to follow and obey God. So God told a man called Samuel to go to the little town of Bethlehem to find the new king. He told him to go to the farm of a man called Jesse. And God was going to tell Samuel which of Jesse's sons would be the new king. So, Jesse brought out 7 sons. Let's count them. What have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now these sons were strong, they were tall, and they looked like they could be kings. But God didn't choose any of them. Well, there was one more of Jesse's sons. He was small and he was still out looking after the sheep. Can you guess who it was? It was David. Nobody thought that he was important enough or big enough to be a king. But when Samuel saw David, God told Samuel that he was the one he had chosen to be the king of all Israel. He put oil on David's head, which was a special way to show that you were God's chosen king. Now, David had lots of adventures before he actually became king. Do you remember one of them? He killed the giant Goliath with his slingshot and 5 stones. Now, when he was older and he was crowned king, the people were very excited. There was music, lots of yummy food, of course, and everyone was happy. They now had a king who would teach them to obey God. David built a beautiful palace. It was the most beautiful palace anywhere. God helped David to defeat all of Israel's enemies. The crops grew in the field, the grass was green, and the people were happy. God was blessing them, just like he had promised to Abraham. So, God kept his promises. Abraham's family had grown into a great nation. They had a beautiful place to live, and God was looking after them and blessing them. And King David made sure that they followed the rules. It was a little bit like the happy time that Adam and Eve had in the garden. Do you remember that Adam and Eve disobeyed God, though, and were put out of the garden? I really hope the people of Israel don't make the same mistake. I wonder what would happen if they did. I wonder what does happen. We'll find out next week. Okay, let's just have a look at our banner and have a look at our pictures to help us remember the story that we have learnt about King David. Whoops. Okay, let's find the right bit. There we go. So we've got our 3 promises coming in, the promises that God had made to Abraham. And you can see God's crown. God is in charge. And he has made David king. And the land is full of trees. And people are happy because God had blessed the people and they were living in God's special place. Okay, so you'll have to listen next week to find out what comes next. Now, a couple of things that you can do at home. You can have a go at making a paper crown. This one was just made out of scrap paper and a few stickers that I had and some sellotape, so I'm sure you can have a go at making one of those at home and remember how David went from being a shepherd to being king of Israel. You could also have a go at making some sheep using some cotton wool and some pens. So enjoy doing those. We're going to sing our song now. We're going to sing all through history because this has got a verse in it which talks about David becoming a shepherd boy to becoming king. And we can remember our story today. And isn't it exciting that God keeps his promises and that we can read our Bible and learn that God, all through history, has kept his promises, kept his word, and will continue to look after us today. So have a good week. Carry on reading your Bibles and I look forward to learning about the next part of the story with you next Sunday. Bye.